Okay, so let's get started from where we left off. I know this is a lab class, not a theory class, but we're going to add on to what we have done over here. So just to give you a brief recap of what we have done before, that we can select each of these clients and we can see the account number, account name, the address and balance, and we have also done something about resetting this so that we can create a new account. We can save that, actually use the create button to save it, or to update something you can make changes and then hit save and it saves it there. But this is for browsing or creating new bank accounts. It doesn't really allow us to do the basic transactions, like we cannot withdraw any amount of money from the account, or we cannot deposit more amount into the existing accounts. So how do we solve those things, right? The bank tellers, they should have access to these things as well as the transaction related stuff. So first of all, how do we fix the user interface and how do we record that into the actual file? That's the question. So in today's class, I'll give you some demonstration and then ask you to do the rest. Okay. So first of all, as far as the user interface goes, we need some more room to put in something extra, and that's where we could start with a tabbed view, although other views are just as good. So let me open this up. So we have a split pane, and in this split pane we have this list of clients. There's this search box, and we also have the client details on the right side. So what I want to do over here is to take this entire split pane and put it into a tab pane. Okay. The way this works, if you look at it, let me give it a name. Let's say this will be called the client browser that lets us browse all the clients. So that's going to be one tab, and then we will have another tab. So you just go into the search box, look for a tab, and then we can grab it onto the drop it to the tab pane, and then we can call this the transaction manager. So if you look at the preview, now we have two things. We have this client browser over here, and if we want to do the transaction, the withdraw deposit, you can just click over here, go to this other thing. Is this process clear? What we did over here is that we took this entire split pane. That's what we had before. We right clicked on it, we went into the wrap pane and then selected the tab pane. Okay, so that's the first step. That creates the tab pane and everything. And to add a new tab, you just search for tab and then drag and drop it over here. So if you wanted to create 3 or 4 tabs, it's just as easy. Just drop them one after another and you get the new tabs right here. So now we got 3 tabs. Okay, so if you need more tabs, you can certainly add them later on. We don't need that though, so for now I will just delete that. So we have this client browser and we have this transaction manager, right? So now we need to do a basic sketch of what are the things you need to have in a transaction manager. So things like we need to select which client we need to do this transaction for. That's a basic requirement, right? We need to select what type of transaction this is going to be. And then we have to say what amount of transaction this is going to be. And with all that, we have to update the record accordingly. So first of all, the way I see this thing, we can actually drop it into, we got an anchor pane over here, right? Let us work with that to start with. Let us get something called a combo box. Now the idea of this combo box goes like this, that where is this show sample data? Yeah, we got the sample data, and if you go into preview, you see in the transaction manager we get all these things. Okay. So this is how I see this, that whenever a client comes to us, perhaps this is where we will see all the clients listed, and we can pick a client from here. Is this idea clear? Okay. So this combo box, we can wrap that into a H box, into a horizontal box. How that's going to help is now we can add a label. The label I actually want it over here, and the label is going to be account. Alright, so which account you're going to do this for, and all these accounts are going to be listed like that. Can I fix this layout? Well, I guess not at this point. I want to have a margin though. Actually, padding. So I wanted to have a gap over here of 10 pixels. That's what I inserted over here for padding. Okay, so we got the account and the this combo box over here, and I want a duplicate of this thing. But for a different purpose. This is not going to be for account, it's going to be for transaction type. Okay, so we got account, and then we got the transaction type. In transaction type, there will be only two types. It's either going to be a withdraw or it's going to be a deposit. So that's going to be in the drop down, right? You could do it like that, or you could also create radio buttons for that you can select any of these. Okay? Just wanted to show you how you can use a different layout. Like you can definitely use a grid layout over here, that you have multiple columns, you put the labels over here, and then you put the combo boxes on the second column. You can definitely do it like that. But we have done that before. I just wanted to show you that there are other ways of doing this thing. It looks different, but it is what it is. So with these two things, the next thing that we will do over here is that we will have another label. And let me just duplicate this, since we have this already. Just duplicate and arrange that right around there. And this one's going to be for the amount. But this amount is not going to be written in a combo box, obviously. This goes within a text field. Okay? So that's that. And finally, we will throw in a button over here that says, say, commit, or I think commit is not a common word for you guys. Maybe you feel better with submit. So we're going to pick which account we're going to do this transaction for. We're going to pick the transaction type, and then there will be this amount over here, and then we hit the submit button. Okay. Two important things that we are missing over here is that we are not recording when this transaction is taking place, what date and what time. For any sort of transaction, whether you're buying something from the store, if you look at the receipt, it has the date printed, it has the time printed. So if you go and try to return a product, they will look at the date first, whether it's within their policy or not. And also for financial matters, when you do the transaction, it really is very important. So there is no reason for not tracking that at all. Now, in order to do that, those times, the date and the time should be red. from the server itself, right? We should read that value from the server. Now, if you need to change that though, you can actually read that or set that in some other way. So let me show you one quick way of doing this thing. So let's say we are going to have another H box. Since we're doing the whole thing with H boxes, or let me just throw in a date pick first. So with the date picker, you can pick what date this transaction is going to be for. And let me show you the preview. So it drops a calendar for you. And that's a very nice thing that you can pick any date, and by default we'll have the server's current date set over here. Okay, what date is it? We can pick it from there, and there will be a field over here for the current time. So the current date and the current time will be listed over here. Now the current time needs to be updated every second or maybe every minute. We can do that, but I'm not going to focus on that part yet. Let us just assume that we will have the time written once and it's not going to change. But in reality, we do need it to change every second. So we'll see how it's done, but in a different class. So this thing again, I can wrap within a H box, and I'd like to throw in a label in here. Label goes over here though. The current date and time goes here, and I will have a padding over here for 10 units. Current date, time. Yes. So we can pick the date from here, and also the time can go within a text field right beside this thing. Okay. Okay, that doesn't really look great. Let me get rid of that. Anyway, the current date, time, and everything, this box should probably be placed up here, and the other ones further down. So I can actually select these three boxes. What is this one? It should be a part of this H box, really. Okay, so that when we close that, it's a one piece, and the submit button is down here. All right, so now that we have this in place, I'd like to make some room over here. And take this H box and bring it up here, so that we have the current date, time printed right up on top, and then we have the selection for account number and name, and then we have the transaction type, and we can write in some amount. We hit the submit button, it gets recorded into some other file. Is this thing clear? So let us look at one of these things one at a time. So first of all, how can you work with a combo box? Right? We need an FXID for this, so that we can select all these things. Let's just call this account combo box. Okay? And you'd see that this is really easy to hook up in code. Once you save this thing, we can go back to our controller and at least update this part. So now we should have one new thing that says the combo box. That drop down list is called the combo box. And now, what are the things, what are the values that you're going to show over here? What should be the data type? Bank account. It should be bank account. Okay. Now another thing, we need to tell how we can put the values in this combo box. You see, in our accounts list view, the list view, which is in here, we have a list view somewhere. Let's look at a preview. That's the list view. It pulls the data from where? From the filtered bank account list. So the combo box also should pull the data from the same place. Okay, let us try this out. This is very easy to write. We say account combo box dot set items filtered bank account list. Okay. Now in doing so, let me just run this without doing anything else, with just a few modifications over here, like just naming that and writing this one line. See what happens over here in the transaction manager, in the account drop down list. We already got these accounts. Another nice thing is that in the client browser, if you use the search box, so let's say I'm only looking for the Hassans wherever they have the name. If you look at Transaction Manager, you'd see only those two options. So the filter is actually working in both places. Now this is a little bit tedious for the actual users, that they have to switch tabs. It would be nice if they have the search option over as well. We can certainly bring that in. We can make it common so that it appears over here, that you can search for it. But what I'm showing you, that you can make it work across multiple tabs. It's the same concept, because it's pulling the data from the filtered list. So if you don't have any filter, right, you see all these accounts listed, but if you filter it out, then also it works. Now in today's task, we saw how the combo box works already. We need to make sure that the transaction type has two types. One is the description, the deposit, and the other one's the withdraw. Those two listed. We can write an amount, and when we submit this thing, it needs to get saved into a file. At least let us do this part. For your assignment, you have to do a little bit extra, obviously, that whenever I pick any account from here, I want to see the history of all the transactions. So the idea goes like this, that I select Raqibul Hassan, for example, over here. I'd like to see a history of all the transactions, listed by date, listed by time, and also how much amount, what did that client do, whether it was a withdrawal operation or a deposit. Okay. I want you guys to write it to the file first. That's the task for the lab today. But in assignment, you have to show it over here in a tabular form, perhaps. I haven't showed you how to work with tables yet, but at least you can create a list view where each line will give us a transaction. It will give us the date, the time, and the transaction type and the actual amount. Is that thing clear? So let us make a provision for that, and also how can you show the current date and current time over here, because we need to get the data from those two things as well. Is this thing clear? Now, it's not really that complicated. First of all, if you look at this one, this is called a date picker, and let us give it a name. Let's call this transaction date picker, and this one transaction time field, because that's a text field, and this one is called a date picker, as you can see from here. The name of that control is a date picker. And this one you need to use that as well. This is the amount field. Okay. And over here, this is the transaction type combo box. Alright. So with all that done, and we need to write code for handle submit action. We need to write code for that, so we put that in place, and then we can go back to our project and make a controller out of it. So we have a problem over here. We have a question mark. We need to tell what are the options for the transaction type, and for that I would say the best thing to do would be to create an enumeration, and that we can call transaction type. So there are two transactions, and since enums are all constants, they should be written in all uppercase. Deposit is a transaction type, and so is withdraw. So we got two transaction types. So over here, what we can do is within the combo box, we can say that the combo box has these two options, and we can say so by saying transaction type combo box dot set items. See, this is where we need an observable list, right? And let us just try to do this first. Transaction type, that's a type, and if you call values, you get an array of transaction type. That array will have two things, deposit and withdraw. Okay, so it gives you all these things, but that's a problem because we are expecting that we have an observable list, but we are given an array, so it's not going to work. So what we have to do is we have to create an observable list first. Okay, observable list of transaction type. Let's call this transaction type list, and that list can be created exactly the same way. You say fx collections dot observable list, right? So here are some options. I mean, let me do it the easy way first. Let us create this observable array list first. We have done so, and what we do here is within the transaction list, transaction type list rather, dot transaction type list dot add all. See, we can add all the transaction types that are available, and these elements can come from this thing, that you get the array, get all the values added into there. And once you do that, then you can pass this transaction type list to that set item. And I'm having a bad day with the keyboard. Alright, so that's that. Okay. So what happens right now with that little fix? You see, we can pick the accounts. We can also pick a type, whether it's deposit or whether it's withdraw. We can easily pick it from there, and we can also query what's written over here by accessing this combo box, then dot get selection model, then dot get selected item. That will give us the item right there. Okay, so what I'd like you guys to do is to write the codes for them. I'm setting it up because some of these things are new, but the actual code needs to be written by you. The next thing is we need to show the current date and current time over here. The current date in this part and the current time over here. How we do that? It's really very easy. We say current date what's that called? Oh, transaction date picker, I think. Yeah, transaction date picker dot set value. See, the data type we are going to pass here is called local date. Okay, and we're not going to pass local date dot max, obviously. How do you get the current date then? That's the question. As you've seen, the data type is called local date. Okay, you get that by saying local date dot now, just like that. That will give you the current date. Okay, and what we do here is we just pass that like this. So if you were to see it in action, you go to the transaction tab, and yeah, it's our current date. April 9th, 2018, it's just written right there, and if you need to change the date for some reason, you can do so within the calendar. Okay. So if you understand this part, that you can get the local date like this, how can you get the current time then? If we have a class for the date called local date, maybe we have something for the time as well. Like so. And Java is really very easy. The people who wrote the library, they kept things very simple, that if you understand one thing, you can probably expand on it and get to the next one. So we can get the local time that way, and we need to write it down to a text field. It's not a date picker, it's going to be something different. And we write it as transaction time field, that's the name, dot set text. Well, I think I got it wrong because I can't press N. Okay, and this is current time. You pass that over here. It's going to be written. It's just that you need to call toString on it so that you get the thing as a string, and just like that, you get the current time written out. It's 12 o'clock, 10 minutes. It was 22 seconds, .273 when I executed that. And just to show you that it indeed changes, see, it's a different time right now. Okay. Ideally, what should happen is that it should auto-update every second, or even in millisecond. We can do that with a little bit of extra code with animation, but I'm not going to do it right now because that's a different topic. Let's just imagine that it will keep on updating. We will have a running clock right there that updates the date and the time accordingly. Is this part clear? Okay. So what's the next step? That we pick a client, we pick a transaction type, that let's say that this client is depositing money, and then we say how much is going to be deposited. We hit the submit button. It needs to be written out into some method. And we have that over here. We have something called handle submit action. Okay, so this is where I want you guys to write your code, and that's going to be today's lab task. Okay, you got to make sure that transaction into a file called transactions.txt. We already have a file called accounts.txt where we are reading from and also writing to. So all these transactions are going to be written into that transactions file. Each transaction will have 1, 2, 3, 4 entries. First of all, print the transaction type, hit a semicolon, and then write down the transaction date, transaction time, and amount. So that's going to be one entry. Okay. And then you go to the next line. and write another transaction. So every time you hit the submit button, that file will have one new entry written to it. Is this thing clear? How do you encompass this thing into a whole idea? Like we have this bank account. I'd like you guys to create a new thing. I'm not going to create this entire class, but I'll give you the parts at least. That within this package we will have a Java class. We'll call this transaction. What are the 4 things for a transaction? First of all, we have a transaction type. Then we have an account for which this transaction takes place. Okay, so I made a huge mistake over here. That's a very important piece of information. You have to write for which account this is happening. The account number goes first, because this is a common file for everyone. And let me put that over here. We call this transaction date. That's the transaction time. How much we're doing this transaction for. So these are the 5 data members that you have in the transaction type. Now try to understand the entire scenario, how this is taking place. That we will pick a date over here, or it's going to be set by the server. The time is going to come from here. So we pick the account, we pick the transaction type, we write the amount, then hit the submit button. It all gets written into some file called transactions.txt. We're not going to destroy the content of the file. Whatever we have, we're going to store that, and then we will add a new line right at the end. Is this task clear? Some of these things I've already done, like setting the date over here, how you can select the account, how you can select the transaction type. So you have to write code for the submit button. Make sure that you get all the data, and then when you hit submit, then you can actually write it down over here. I'm not going to flesh out this class. You can write the getter and setter methods. That's very easy to do. Right? Do whatever is needed and make sure that it all gets written into the file. And whatever we have covered so far in this course, if you have understood those, you should be able to do this task. I mean, the task, if I put it in simple words, you just have to write code for the submit button. And along with that, you'd have to make some changes in some places, like this transaction class needs to be fleshed out a little bit, but you should be able to do that. Is this thing clear? I mean, without this thing, the bank account software that we're trying to build is not going to be of any use, because our task is not to browse through the clients. We really need to have to do the actual transactions. Let's say we want to withdraw some money from Rakib side because he got so much money over here, right? So it would be a nice thing to select him and then withdraw a lot of amount from his account. So whether we can do that is the task. So let me save this thing, and I'm going to upload the code. The rest is up to you. And with that said, I will just announce the assignment sometime today, because now we got everything in place, I think. So let me pause this recording. Okay, let us get back to this thing that we need to write code for the submit button, and it should be up here, right? So This is kind of obvious that we are going to use random access file. We are writing into a file, and the first few lines for writing to a file you know already, right? Random access file output equal to new random access file. We're going to write to this file, that's why read write. And then we can surround the statement with try catch as needed. And then what we need to make sure that we don't destroy any data. So we say output.seek, output.length. That's why we take the file pointer right to the very end, and that would also we have IO exception in place. So that's that. And this is where we write our line that we need to write a single transaction. And at this point, I want you guys to notice that we have done so for the bank account already, that we have something called get all data, which gives you all the data in one place. Okay. So we're going to write something like this in our example as well. So in the transaction class, we're going to paste this rather, and we will fix this. Obviously, this is not going to be about account number, account name, address, and balance. It will be something else. Okay. Now, first of all, you need to put a constructor in place, and let us just create that constructor. That takes everything over here. We can definitely use the getter and setters, but for now, I will just keep that. So notice what we're typing out over here is the account number, the transaction type, transaction date, transaction time, and amount, all these things. So 5 things in one place. So let us go with that one at a time, and we can write that with semicolon separation. First of all, how do we get the account number? This is bank account dot get like that dot get account number. So that's the account number part. Then we can put a semicolon right here, and then we need the transaction type. How do you get the transaction type? You just ask. So transaction type dot, well, to string, whatever the transaction type it is, it's going to give you the value. And then we need something else. So over here, that's the transaction type. That's the transaction date. And let us convert that to string. And let us get the transaction time as well to string. And finally, transaction, what is it? Oh, the amount. We're going to write the amount. So that's all the data about a single transaction. So now the question is, how do we create the transaction object so that we can write it out? Because if you had a transaction object, let me create one over here. Okay, let us omit this for now. We will have a transaction in some way. What I'm saying is that if you have that in place, you could simply write output.writeBytes, transaction.get all data, and that's pretty much it. With that, you will put a new line and write it to the file. So the task itself is going to be very simple. Now the question is, how do we create this transaction object? Okay, we have to call new transaction. What are the things you need in the transaction? First of all, you need a bank account, right? How do you get the bank account? It will be the account that's selected from this combo box. What's the name of that combo box? Well, actually, I think bank. Or is it account combo box? I forgot. Yeah, account combo box dot get selection model dot get selected item that gives you the bank account already. So that way you can get the bank account, not bank action. That's the bank account. Okay. The next is, how do we get the transaction type? Similarly, we can do so. Transaction type combo box dot get selection model dot get selected item that gives you the transaction type already. How do we get the transaction date? We get it from the date picker. So transaction date picker dot get value that gives you the transaction date. Here's a bit of a problem because we have transaction time field. There is no such thing as get value. We have a get text, but we get a string out of it. Local time is a different data type. Okay, so in order to fix this, we simply put it in local time dot parse. So whatever time is written, it's going to be parsed into this thing. We have had similar experience with integer.parseInt. So you can actually read a text and convert it to a data type. Java has support for that. And finally, the amount is going to be written into the field. That's a string, but we need double, so we put it inside what? Thank you, double dot parse double. And that's there. So with those 5 pieces of information, now that we have access to them, we can throw it in one place. Time and the amount, you put that in one place, and let me bring them down so that we can read it in one screen like this. So once you pass that, you can create that transaction object and you can write it to the file. Okay, let us quickly try this out. So the target was to take out some money from Rakibsar's account. We're going to withdraw. We're going to withdraw, let's say 10,000 taka initially. So we hit submit and let's see if something changed. So we got a new file. That's a good thing. Let us open this up. So we see for account number 2, we are withdrawing money. That's the date. That's the time. How much money did you withdraw? 10,000 taka. So if we didn't get any notification, that's a bad thing, right? And we didn't clear the form, that's also a bad thing. Let us try to withdraw some more money. Let's say 20,000 taka this time around. We hit submit and we can reload this. See, that's how it works. If you want to do the yeah, we should give a feedback. That's a good observation that every time you do any transaction, if it's withdraw or if it's deposit, you should post a message saying that that's your current balance. And it should also be updated on the other side as well, because Rakibsar is not going to have that much amount anymore. We have taken out 30,000 taka already, but it didn't get updated, right? So that needs to be updated, and I need to make changes over here. And also, you should write code for the bank account. I have placeholders for this. I have placeholder for deposit and withdraw, but I haven't written any code. So what you're supposed to do is whenever you try to do this transaction, you actually got the bank account already. If you look at the code, we got the bank account already. We should do the transaction on it. Bank account dot withdraw or bank account dot deposit, whatever it is, you do that, and that will take care of the current balance. If that transaction is successful, then you print a proper successful message. If it's not successful, you return an error message. So depending on that, you carry out your task. And also, it has changed the bank account, so you have to update the accounts.txt file as well, so that if I want to know the current balance, I see the current balance properly. Yeah. Because right now, they're not synchronized. The current balance doesn't get updated. But at least we got this thing in place. We're writing into two different files. Is this thing clear? So, in your actual assignment, you need to add a lot of more things. You need to show all these proper messages. And over here, what I wanted extra is the history of all the transactions. That is particular to this particular account. I don't want to see the history for all other accounts. If I select one particular account over here, it's going to filter out the history for that account only. Okay. So there is a lot to do even in this form. I'll ask you guys to think about that, and also make sure that you have the withdraw and deposit written out for the bank account, so that we can call that method and make sure that they work properly. Okay. Any question about any of these things? If not, I'm going to announce the assignment today, and the only thing I need to consult with you right now is the deadline for that assignment. We're going to do it in two different ways. We're going to do it with the text files, and then we will take the same problem into database, and when we learn databases, we will try to solve the same thing over there again. And that's how you should do it with databases. But since we haven't covered databases yet, we're starting off with this one. So today is 9th, and some of the code is already in place. You know what you have to do. What about 10 days from now? You can work in a group of 2. Is 10 days going to be enough for you? There will be 2 assignments. One is this thing, and then we'll have to do the same thing with databases again. So we have to save some time for that. Well, let me know. Unless you tell me, I can't tell whether this is enough or not. Our exams are starting from 26th. You can throw this all out. You can come up with a totally new design. That would actually be better. So till 19th. Okay. Maybe what, 21st?
Yes.
Okay, alright. So Saturday 21st it is. That will be the deadline. I'll write the requirements for the assignment and I'll post it on our Google Classroom. You'd have to submit your assignment through Google Classroom. You'll see that there is an upload option. That once you're done with your work, you can create a zip file out of it, zip the entire folder, and then upload your work. Okay? You don't have to send me an email. Do not send me an email for this. Once you're done, you submit this thing through the Google Classroom. Okay. So that's going to be the deadline, 21st. Any other question on any of these things? No? Alright then, so that'll be it for today's class then.